Hello, good afternoon. My name is Carla Metzdorf. I am a certified health and life coach that works with moms to overcome anxiety, and I'm also admin to the group Overcoming Anxiety for Stressed Out Moms Who Have Had Enough. Today, I'm coming on to talk to you about anxiety. Is anxiety your enemy? Or is anxiety more than that? What exactly is anxiety? What happens when we treat anxiety like it's our enemy? And what happens if we change our perspective about anxiety? What could be the result then? So as you come on, ladies, say hello. I'm going to just wait to see if more come on. Let me find us in the group, because that is really where I get to see questions and whatnot. For some reason, I don't get much on my phone. So, oh, hey, Abby. Say hello, ladies. And let's talk about anxiety. Specifically, is anxiety our enemy? Let's start there. Well, I'm gonna kind of talk about that with talking a little bit about my experience, okay? So I grew up with a very anxious mom. Anxiety was very prominent in my life because I saw how my mom, my grandmother had it, some other aunts had it, and all these people who had it, right? All they talked about was taking medication. But you also have to remember, these were women who grew up, okay, from the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, okay? They didn't have the information that we have now. Medication, as far as I knew, was the only way to deal with anxiety. You're anxious, you go pop a pill. That is all I knew. So when I started feeling anxiety myself, okay, all I wanted to do, I ran to my mom right away and said, oh, I think I'm feeling anxious. So what did she do? She threw a pill at me. Here, take one of my Xanax. Go see the doctor and get your own Xanax. That was the beginning of my relationship with anxiety. I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better because I did what my mom did, right? And she wasn't going to tell me to go work with anybody because she didn't, and she didn't know any other way of dealing with it. So to me, anxiety, okay, I treated it like, well, my mom's had it all her life. My grandmother had anxiety, depression most of her life, and they take pills. And I'm thinking, well, there must be no other way to deal with this, right? So, I didn't really seek anything. But then things started getting worse and worse and worse, right? To the point where what I was dealing with was worse than what my mother, my grandmother, anyone I knew was dealing with, because they couldn't help me, right? Anything that they were telling me to do was not working. I'm the only one where, for some reason, anxiety totally took over my life. Like, I couldn't function. My mother was functioning. My grandmother was functioning. Why couldn't I function? So anxiety to me was like the enemy, was a bad guy. I was sick. I had some kind of disease. Or there's something wrong with me. That is how I viewed it, right? And any time that I felt it, it was like I had a cold, you know? I felt like someday these feelings are just going to disappear. I was waiting for all these feelings to leave me. Like, I was waiting for that magic pill or some kind of magic something to come along and cure me, all right? It wasn't until many years later, okay, doing a lot of research, working with professionals, that I understood really what anxiety was. once I understood anxiety, I knew that I didn't have to rely on medication. And then I also understood, as long as I see anxiety as my enemy, okay? So in other words, as long as I feel that anxiety and go, oh boy, there is the anxiety again, and be afraid of it and have anxiety about my anxiety, I'm going to stay in that anxiety cycle. Is this all making sense? Hi, Shanika. So for the ladies who were on with me and heard what I said, did that make sense? Do you need any explanation? So in other words, anxiety to me was something I had to, it was like a disease, right? And I was waiting for the cure. Like some doctor was going to cure me. No one told me that the power was in my own hands, right? My mother wasn't going to tell me that. My grandmother wasn't going to tell me that because they couldn't fix themselves, right? So I saw this as, I have it because it's hereditary. I mean, why else would I have anxiety, right? It's hereditary. That's why I have it, because they have it. So it's kind of like I felt like I had some kind of disease that went from my grandmother to my mother to me. And my sister, I found out later, was dealing with a lot of mental illness, anxiety, depression. So it's a family thing, right? It's hereditary. So I was thinking, wow, and we're going to have this the rest of our lives. And I just remember, seeing anxiety as, oh boy, as I say, it's the enemy, it's one of those illnesses you just don't want to get because it takes over your life. So now that I have it, what am I going to do about it? But as I said, hi Tina. As I said, when I started to understand anxiety, okay, that anxiety is not some disease. It's not some illness that you catch, okay? I didn't understand specifically what anxiety was. And I don't think my mother, my grandmother understand either. And my sister has a clue. Plus she has me as a sister. But, it's too close. My sister does not want my help. So my sister still struggles. But I, on the other hand, have overcome anxiety. Why? Because I learned if you keep thinking of anxiety, okay, as the enemy, okay, that's the word I'm using, okay? You keep seeing anxiety as the bad guy, the enemy, okay? The thing that you just don't want and you can't wait to get rid of it. And when is it going to go away? All right? It's going to stay. And until I understood that concept is when I started seeing anxiety differently. In other words, I changed my perspective about anxiety and responded to it differently. And doing that, ultimately, my central nervous system calmed down. And that's basically how I overcame. Because I changed my relationship with anxiety. Now, let's start from the very beginning, okay? So when you're anxious, ladies, well, first of all, before I go on, anybody have any questions so far? Anybody want any clarity? Hi, Monique. Anybody have any questions about anything I said? And if you just came on and didn't hear everything I said, the replay will be after this. Okay. So, anxiety, right? We're always thinking anxiety is a disease, an illness, because that's what we're told sometimes. And anxiety in and of itself is just an emotion. But it's more than that, because it's an emotion that what's the word? Like, will grip your life. Like, will take over your life, okay? if not handled, not dealt with, right? But see, the thing is, you feel stressed out in life, right? You start worrying about things in life. Now, stress and worry, hopefully, I mean, the stress is inevitable, ladies. We're all stressed out. I mean, our stresses are little, they're big. Everybody feels stress. If you're a human being, you've had stress in your life. The thing is, when that stress builds up, okay, and you start worrying about your life, right? Your life, your family's life, your friend's life, just life in general, okay? And it weighs on your mind, right? You start feeling it in your body, right? Because what you think is what you feel, okay? And if all of that is negative, you're going to get a negative experience. So if you don't deal with that negativity, right? If you, let's say you have an illness, okay? And you really have a lot of fear about this illness, okay? What if, okay? We know those what ifs, right? That come into our mind. What if this happens? What if that happens? Now, fear is something that happens in the present time, okay? Fear is more present. When we start worrying about now that illness, that is future, okay? What if this happens? What if that happens, okay? But when that builds up and it starts taking over our lives, okay? This is where anxiety comes in, okay? Anxiety is so much more than just worry. There is a difference between worry and anxiety, and I actually have 2 live trainings on that. So if anybody wants that, let me know, and I can send it to you, or it may be on YouTube, I'm not sure. And if you don't see it on YouTube, ask me for it, and I'll send it to you. But just quickly, one of the main differences between worry and anxiety is worry can lead you to take action, where anxiety immobilizes you. Anxiety will take over your life, okay? That's why it's important that you understand what it is. Anxiety, yes, it's an emotion, but if you don't understand what you're dealing with at the time that you're feeling it, you're gonna do a script in your head, right? Your thoughts take over. Like you start thinking, send it to you, Monique? Okay, I will. You're gonna start with the scripts in your head and you're gonna start thinking, what is it that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling this, right? And now you start focusing on how you feel. You start focusing on your thoughts, your feelings, and you might start avoiding life, right? You start not wanting maybe to get out of bed, or you get out of bed, but now maybe you don't want to leave the house, or you leave the house but you don't want to drive, or you can drive but somebody has to be in the car, or maybe you can drive but now you just don't want to go to, like, you won't go far distances, or maybe you won't go on vacation anymore. You every time somebody says, oh, come to the wedding, or come to my barbecue, or let's go out to lunch, you decline all invitations because anxiety immobilizes you. This is why when we feel anxious, ladies, we see anxiety as the enemy. And then we start telling ourselves, and we start telling everybody who will listen, I have anxiety. Anxiety has taken over my life. I'm very anxious. We start really, connecting to that anxiety and making it a part of us. We identify with it. This is where anxiety, we see it as the enemy. But if you understood why you were anxious, okay, what anxiety is and why you're anxious, you'll understand anxiety is not quite the enemy. See, have you ever said that you're broken? Who thinks they're broken? I hate that word. Who has ever said, I'm broken? because that's how anxiety makes you feel, that your life is falling apart and it's never going to be put back together. But when people say I'm broken, I go bananas. I hate that word, because you are not broken. Has any of you ever said that about yourself, or do you feel that way now? Anybody? You're not broken, okay? Your brain, okay, is so well made, okay? It was made by God, okay? God gave us all these emotions. He didn't give us these emotions to harm us. They're there for a reason. These emotions are there to help us, right? How do you know, okay, if something is wrong, right? If, like, let's say, well, crying. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for answering. Okay, like crying. Crying is a stress release. When I had anxiety, I cried every day. I mean, as the years went on, like in the beginning, I had, how am I going to deal with this? And then I cried every day. And then as I learned about anxiety, the crying kind of dwindled. But there was a time I cried every single day. It was my life. And my husband's like, what's wrong? Like, did you forget how to be happy? Seriously, he was like, Carla. I mean, and I was really hating my life. I hated how I felt. I hated the thoughts I was having. Hated my life. And I had a beautiful life. I mean, I had a husband who loved me. I mean, anxiety wasn't helping very much, and I felt bad, you know, that he had to put up with me, because that's how I felt. You know, I had 2 beautiful kids. I have a lovely home. And I wasn't enjoying anything about my life. How? I was in pain. Anxiety was stealing my life away. But the thing was, I understood later on that anxiety is more than just an emotion, okay, that takes over your life, okay? Anxiety is there to tell you that something is going on. Something is not measuring up in your life. Something needs to be nourished. Something needs to be changed. If you're feeling anxiety, that is the time for you to get really present and be like, okay, if I'm feeling anxiety, don't even wait till you get anxious. When you're stressed out, the first thing is, I'm stressed. I need to take care of myself. That's why I push self-care. But let's say you don't do self-care, because we all come up with excuses, right? I don't have time for that. I have a family to take care of, okay? You know, self-care is something that other women do because they have time for it. I don't have time for it. So now you see yourself worrying a lot. You're worried about yourself. You're worried about your family. You're worried about your finances. You're just worried, okay? But you're still functioning, okay? But now you're worried to the point where you are starting to not sleep, not eat well. You're starting to not feel yourself. You're losing the desire to enjoy life, right? You're declining all those invitations. Maybe, like I said before, you're not leaving your house. All you want to do is stay in bed. You don't want to drive, or you do drive, but then you're afraid of it, you know. But so when that starts happening, okay, at each stage, you have to say to yourself, first of all, you know, that's why awareness is so important, okay? Because unless you understand, okay, how this goes, you're not able to recognize that things are getting worse. I need to take care of myself and do something, okay? Because maybe you always have in the past. So you think, well, I've always dealt with life, I'll deal with it again. But things build up over time, and as they do, you know what you're doing? You're training the brain. You're telling the brain every time there's stress, every time something happens in life, this is how we are going to respond. All this making sense, ladies? Can you give me a 1? Can you say yes? Anybody have any questions? Let me know, okay? All right. So now you're training the brain, and you're being a certain way, right? So now anxiety's taken over your life. But when you can recognize it, okay, and understand that anxiety is there to help you, okay, you're gonna know, okay, that I am feeling these feelings right now. If you are not convinced that it's anxiety, you think it's something else, then it's time to go to the doctor, okay? If you're feeling feelings, symptoms, okay, and you're like, I don't know if this is panic or if I'm having a heart attack, I can't tell you. I mean, until you're checked by a doctor, you need to understand what you're feeling inside. And, because those feelings are real, okay? I don't care how many times you're told by somebody that you're imagining these feelings. You're not imagining, they're not in your mind, you're not making them up. You might be causing them because of your fear, your worry, okay? And the more you focus on those symptoms, the more, right, they're going to intensify, right? That is on you, right? That is something that you're responsible for. But for you to be able to say, okay, this is not me having a heart attack. This is just anxiety. You may have to go to the doctor to really understand that. Does that make sense? I feel like I can't drive too far by myself. Okay, thanks for sharing that, Tina. Yeah, anxiety can do that to you. But I'm gonna get there. See, the thing is, when you understand that, like when you finally come to terms with, this is just anxiety, okay? It's just, and then you start understanding the brain-body connection. I mean, your brain is part of your body, but the brain, like it speaks to the body. When the brain sends out all those chemicals to prepare you for fight and flight, okay? As the brain is preparing you, right? So, okay, let's say, I don't know. Let's say, I'm sitting here working, okay? And then my husband comes up behind me and scares me, and I go, oh! So in that moment, right, I'm going to feel the fear. Because especially like right now, I'm alone. But if someone was to come up behind me, I would freak out because it'd be like, I thought I was home alone. Well, where'd you come from? So what the brain does, okay, by you jumping like that, okay, you told the brain something is wrong, right? So the brain, and this is all so quick, right? Nanoseconds, right? The brain sends out that SOS to the body, fight or flight, something's wrong. Carla just jumped out of her skin, right? So, but then I turn around and I see, oh, it's just you. Oh, you scared me. And I start calming down, right? When the brain goes, oh, it's just her husband. She's calming down. This is not a real threat. Okay, abort. Okay, body, we can calm down. It was just her husband. Nothing's wrong. So it just continues sending out all those chemicals, because now I'm not giving it reason for it to think that my life is being threatened. Is all that making sense? Makes sense. Same. I feel like anxiety hits me more in the morning when I wake up and I'm super early. That's possible. Absolutely. Does that, what I just explained, did that make sense, or do you need more explanation? But that's how the brain goes, right? The brain looks for cues from you. What are you telling the brain, right? You make the interpretation. You do. So you tell the brain, that's scary. That really frightened me, right? You tell the brain that, oh, okay, I'm good now. Only you can calm everything down, right? But now, let's say that wasn't my husband, okay? Let's say somebody else, it's somebody else coming into my house, and I don't know this person, okay? So I might stay heightened, like, who are you? Why are you here? I don't know you, and so now my body's going, oh, Carla doesn't know this person. Oh boy. So now my body, okay, my heart might speed up, my digestion may slow down, my breath might get more labored. I might even feel a little dizzy, like I'm going to pass out. I'm scared. There's a stranger in my house. I don't know who this person is. I didn't know this person was coming into my house. I feel threatened. So now my brain's like, okay, we're going to help her prepare for that fight, that flight, right? But then later I might find out, oh, that's just one of my daughter's friends that I don't know, that she invited over, that I didn't know who was coming, right? And then I might go, oh, and then be like, oh, well, thank God, I thought this was a stranger going on in my house, And then I calm everything down because I don't feel threatened anymore. Ladies, your brain is always trying to protect you, never understands whether there's a tiger after you or your imagination playing with you, something you're seeing on TV, something you're just reading. All it knows is what you're telling it, what you're thinking in your mind. Still making sense, ladies? So, the brain, okay, you are not broken. Your brain is doing exactly what it was created to do. It's just that you are misinterpreting what you're seeing, what you're hearing, okay? What you're dealing with in life. You gave a mixed message. The brain was reacting, right? But with anxiety, what happens is sometimes we don't, sometimes we can move past that scary episode. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes things happen in our life, and that fear, that worry, it builds up, okay? And that response stays with us and is what is programmed in our cells, right? So maybe throughout the day now, although, thank God, that was just my husband, or thank God, that was just my daughter's friend, that wasn't a stranger coming into my house. For some reason, my heart is still going, right? And now I'm fixated, like, why, okay, it was just my daughter's friend, why is my heart going? Why won't my heart stop beating so fast? Oh, I don't feel like, why is my stomach so upset? Or maybe it's like on my mind. Maybe now I'm that reaction that I had I was so sensitized to it that it lasted in my body. And now I'm so focused on it. And maybe I took it all the way to nighttime with me, that when I'm going to lay down to sleep, my cortisol levels are still so high that I'm having trouble sleeping. So this is where anxiety can really start taking over, okay? Because we're not understanding that whole process, Okay, we're being so focused on how we feel and what we went through that we're not understanding it was just a response. And I can change that response anytime I want. That all making sense, ladies? I know I keep asking that, but I mean, I'm saying a lot here. And it makes total sense to me, but I want it to make total sense to you. Okay? So anxiety, when it starts taking over your life, you're going to see it as the enemy. Okay? Because how am I going to get rid of this? I've had this for many, many years. I've been on medications. I try so many things. I keep going to doctors. No one's helping me. I don't know what to do. First of all, to overcome it is to understand it. I mean, that is just the truth. If you don't understand what you're dealing with, I can't tell you how many of you I've spoken to, okay, that have told me, well, I've worked with professionals, and, you know, I've seen many videos, but I still just don't understand what anxiety is. You can't overcome what you don't know and understand. All right? Because now, somebody who understands anxiety, see, when I work with a client, I have videos that teach them step by step how to overcome anxiety. It tells them what anxiety is and why they have it. So when they have stress in their lives, when they're worried about something, instead of saying, oh, there's anxiety, get anxiety about their anxiety, they can speak differently to themselves about what they're feeling and why. Does that make sense? Because instead of saying, oh no, these feelings, what are they? I mean, they know what it is. So now what they're doing is they're telling themselves, and hopefully they're doing this, okay, there's that response again, okay? This is just my body responding. This is just cortisol, just adrenaline. I'm not dealing with anything else. So what do I have to do now, okay, to lower those cortisol levels, to make my mind, my brain, my body feel safe? Because until you feel safe, the brain is gonna still get those signals, okay? Something's wrong, and it's gonna still send out, okay, the cortisol, the adrenaline, right? The brain is waiting for you to give a different message. Okay. Now, when you get good at understanding what anxiety is and why you have it, you can start what I call sitting with that anxiety, understanding what it is, and being different with it. So that you're sending different signals, right? You're being different with it. If you stay as you always have the same mindset, you always do what you've always done, you're going to stay stuck. So the secret to overcoming anxiety is to change your response, change your relationship with it, to understand what it is. But the information itself is not enough. You have to implement. You have to make change. So when you see anxiety as the enemy, you stay in that, oh, here it is again. Oh no, what is it going to do? You have this anxiety about your anxiety and you stay stuck. But when you see anxiety differently, okay, when you see anxiety as, let's say, a friend, okay, I got good at going, okay, you're back. I mean, because like I was having my good days and my bad days. Like there was a time where I was feeling anxiety, and then I would go without anxiety, and then I would come back, and then, and you know, it was like a roller coaster for a little bit, you know. I mean, the road to recovery is never like this. It's like this, twists and turns and spirals and loops and, okay? But the thing is to be consistent, to know what you know, be consistent with it, and to keep going, all right? Because the moment, right, you revert back and say, oh, this anxiety, I don't know, and you keep believing it's the enemy, you're gonna stay stuck, right? What is the function of anxiety? The function of anxiety, it's there to warn you. It's there as a warning sign, okay? To tell you something is up. Something needs your attention. That is it, okay? It's, I would say, hi anxiety, okay, you're back. So my brain thinks something's going on. What is going on in my life, okay? And you know what? Maybe I saw a movie or read a book or something triggered, okay? I mean, we can be easily triggered. You know, this reminded me of something years ago that made me focus on how I felt at that time, and it triggered me, right? So the thing is now, why does this thing trigger me so much, right? So it's basically, anxiety is there to tell you to change your focus. That thing that you're avoiding to deal with needs to be dealt with. That makes sense? So if you're not dealing with an illness, if you're not dealing with your financial problems, or your marriage falling apart, or losing your job, or you know, anything that could cause great stress in your life, okay? You're gonna wind up feeling that, okay? You're gonna wind up losing sleep, and it's gonna affect all areas of your life. Eventually, you're gonna wind up having to deal with it, or life is gonna get hard. So, what I did, okay, and you know, and what I recommend to basically make it, so what did I say? Oh, you need to, okay, how do you respond differently? Responding differently is, as I said before, is understanding that mind-body connection, okay? Understanding how the brain communicates to the body, all right? And why you're reacting the way you are. So now you no longer want to react, you want to respond with a very conscious, very logical response, right? Instead of reacting with emotion, I want to respond using logical thought, okay? I want to be calm. I want to make decisions with calm and faith instead of with fear and worry. So there are many things you can do, okay? Like breathing and like havening and I can't even think right now. I seriously can't think right now. Working out. All these things are great, right? But the thing is, you have to make change up here. Tapping was what I was trying to think of. There's so many things you could do. I mean, when your brain is like in that state of what if and what if, you know, what you want to do is you want to disrupt that cycle that it's in. Some people splash cold water on their face or take a cold shower, you know, but those are in the moment things, ladies. I mean, you know, people pop some gum in their mouth. I'll chew and focus on the gum. You know, there are things you could do very much in the present time. Focus on your breath, as I said. That can help the anxiety. But what are you going to do for long term? Because that's what I'm about, okay? And the only way to understand long term is to understand what anxiety is, okay? Because it will persist. I mean, if chewing gum is all you had to do, I mean, everybody would be chewing gum. Nobody would need antidepressants. And if everybody overcame it with splashing water on their face, and that's all you had to do, I mean, I think we would all live in our swimming pools, or we would be taking showers all day long, right? So if you want long term, okay, changing the relationship with anxiety is the way to go. Don't see it as the enemy. Anxiety is not there to harm you, to hurt you. I know it's taken over your life. I know your life, for a lack of a better word, has sucked since anxiety has entered it. But it's there to help you understand that something needs tweaking in your life. And once you tweak it, okay, your life, all those things that you want in life, they're gonna come, and they're gonna get so much better. But this is not just about science, ladies. I mean, yes, I had to change my relationship with anxiety. I did things to help the central nervous system understand that it's okay. I wanted the parasympathetic to be more prominent. You know, I understood my vagus nerve was really upset, overstimulated. I had to calm things down, right? But the other thing was, I said this last week when I talked about, you know, believing in the higher power, or, you know, for me, that higher power is God. But forming a relationship with God, getting closer with God, understanding His promises, and being able to repeat His words and let His words be, you know, what my go-to, you know, that I recite in my mind, you know, instead of I can't, or you know, I'm not capable. I speak God's truth, and I have really, over the years, have rewired my mind in how I think, right? And it's gotten me through so much. Because stress hits everybody. It doesn't matter, I'm an anxiety coach. It doesn't mean that I will never ever have an anxious moment. It's been a while. I mean, you all know I lost my parents in the last couple of years, and yes, I've had, how do I say it? My energy was off. I wouldn't say I had anxiety like I did many years ago. It was just very different. I felt the, oh boy, what am I gonna do now? You know, it was just a lot, right? I felt the stress. It was starting to get to me. But because I understood how this goes, I was able to get through this, right? I was able to lean on God, okay? And I was also able to tell my brain, hey, listen, you need to grieve, cry your eyes out, do what you gotta do. You know, I knew enough not to hold in emotion. I knew enough that my body was stressed and not to flip out about it. I mean, I wasn't sleeping well because, I mean, the night after both my parents died, I basically was up all night crying. You know, grief, but let's not make this about grief. But I'm saying stress is going to happen in your life, but knowing what to do with that stress, okay? Not internalizing it, not being afraid of it, allowing yourself to be human, okay? Giving yourself that grace. I gave myself, so much grace. And I didn't know back then I had to give myself grace. I know that now. and, practicing self-care, all of that. I'm in a better place now than ever. Seriously, I of course I'm sad my parents are gone. I'm very sad, and would I love for them to be here? Of course. But I also faced the reality that it was just their time to go home, as they say, right? Heaven. And it's time for me to go on with my life. So I have come a long way in my thinking, right? So when you can change the mindset, change the way you respond to life, period, not just to anxiety, but to stress, right? Because that's where it starts, right? When you become so stressed out, and then you become fearful and worrisome, and it all builds up. So when you can, don't just deal with life. You gotta really get to that root cause, right? We are looking for long term here. Very long term. And I don't know why, but I lost you. Where are you? No, that's last week's live. Where did you guys go? Oh, there you are. I do that, and it follows me to sleep. Honestly, Monique, I'm not sure. I'm reading this too late. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but as long as this is making your life better and helping you to deal with anxiety. But can you ladies see now why it's so much better to have anxiety as your friend and not your enemy, right? I know it's nasty, you hate it, you want it gone, I get it. But the more you fight it, the more I wish it wasn't here, get out of my life, when are you gonna go away, when, the more it's gonna linger. Just acceptance. Acceptance is key, okay? And, it's like you have a friend who's very annoying, or you have a sibling who's very annoying, right? But you're not gonna get rid of your sibling, and this is a friend of yours, and you don't want to end your friendship, at least not yet. But you tolerate it. But what you do is you set boundaries, and you find a way to respond and be with that sibling or that annoying friend, okay, so that that friend, that sibling, is not disrupting your life. Does that make sense? So if I also have quite a few live trainings on acceptance, so you could go on YouTube and at least see the latest one on YouTube. But before I sign off, is there any questions? Anything needs clarity? Anything at all? Any remarks that you want to say about this? Do you all really understand? Even if you're seeing this in the replay, drop me a comment. Is anxiety, how do you see anxiety? If anxiety is just always the enemy to you, I actually have been known to say that anxiety was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And a lot of you may shake your head and think that's crazy and sick of me to say, but anxiety changed me and made me who I am today. The way I see it, the person who I was getting me in trouble. The person who I was making me sick. The person who I am now is allowing me to live life with peace and joy that I would never have been able to live if I had my own mindset. I changed my mindset, and I go through life feeling a peace that I've never felt before in my life. I have faith that I never had before. So I'm experiencing life in such a great way. And like I said before, it's not that I don't have stress or pressure or anything bad going on. It's just, I just know I'm going to be okay. You know, I've already been through so much in life, right? I'm going to be okay no matter what life throws my way, right? So ladies, anything that I said that you need any comments, anything at all? Anybody got anything that they want to add? Any questions? If not, I'm going to jump off. But I'm hoping that you can now see why it's really important to view anxiety differently. Okay? That anxiety is really not the enemy. It's doing its job. And if you understand it well enough, you will overcome. Okay? You will overcome for sure. Okay? It only has a grip on you because you let it. And I know you don't want to hear that. I know you don't want to hear that. But it is the truth. Now, I understand sometimes we are anxious because of our gut health. We are anxious because, you know, our environment with like heavy metals and mold and stuff like that. I get it. The thing is to understand why you particularly have anxiety. Get to the root cause. And when you think that you have anxiety for other reasons than you're responding to something, okay? I have anxiety because my gut is messed up. You know, there are things you can do to correct all that too. All right, ladies. I don't see any questions or anything. It doesn't look like anybody is adding anything. I'm just refreshing the page just in case I missed something. Oh, yes I did. PMR. I also like to use Vicks Vapor Inhaler since a lot of times my chest feels tight, like I can't breathe deeply. I understand what you're saying. I used to love Vicks when I was a kid. Because I understand what you're saying. You know, the smell of it and it feels like, you know, it opened up everything and all of a sudden you can breathe. But is it really getting rid of your anxiety, Sarah? You know, I mean, it's kind of like what I was talking about before, right? You know, you could do cold water on your face, you could chew gum, you could put bottles of Vicks on you, or vapor inhaler. I never actually did it that way. But it's not going to change your situation, okay? It's going to give you a very temporary relief. You want long-lasting relief, you got to do what you can to make your body feel safe and change that response, okay? Anything else, ladies? I'm sorry. I guess I need to keep updating to see if there's anything else. I almost missed Sarah's. Okay, no, it was just Sarah. If there's nothing else, I'm definitely going to jump off. But if there's any questions, oh, you're welcome, Abby. If you have any questions later on, anyone watching the replay, you come up with any questions, have any comments, put it in, let me know, and I'll answer them later, all right? Be well, ladies. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.